Well, with Yellowstone finally having come to its end, I must say that the second half of Season 5 didn't disappoint. In disappointing me. With the star of the show sitting this final ride out, and seeing how the quality of writing in Taylor Sheridan's products has slipped across the board, expectations were already low going into this final season. But some way, somehow, Yellowstone still found a way to limbo under that low bar. Kevin Costner wasn't the only thing missing this season. Long gone were the gripping stories of preserving the Dutton Ranch from circling vultures, which usually ended in shootouts or someone's death. All pretense that this show was anything more than a soap opera is far in the rear view, and everything that once made so many of these characters likable is just a distant memory. It's clear now that Costner leaving the show led to this entire second half of Season 5 being rewritten. And it looks like Sheridan put in his trademark low level of writing effort, as this final outing was incredibly sparse when it came to having an actual story. Instead, we got a cobbled together mess of Sheridan marketing his own 4-6's ranch, stroking his own ego, a few scenes here and there trying their best to wrap things up, and a whole lot of storylines and scenes that were nothing more than an extended farewell to the series, its characters, and the ranch, which were typically dragged out as long as possible to reach the nearly hour-long runtimes. And I'll hit on some of the things that made this final season unbearable to watch at times, and some of the lowlights these last 6 episodes brought us, after we recap some of Season 5 Part 2's storylines. So something spoilery this way comes. The season began with John Dutton's unceremonious apparent suicide, which happened off-screen and which Beth and Casey learn about when they arrive at a crime scene at the governor's mansion. Because if you're going to kill off the main character, whose actor couldn't return to the show, of course you're going to have them die in the least honorable, weakest, pettiest way imaginable. Beth and Casey have their suspicions about their father's death, which are later confirmed, and Beth immediately knows that her estranged brother Jamie is responsible. Throughout the course of the season, we do learn that Jamie's slam piece and market equities executive Sarah Atwood contracted some high-dollar hitters to remove the governor from the board. Jamie was apparently ignorant of the hit, but he wastes no time in making moves to realize his own political ambitions in the wake of his father's death, as well as working with market equities to move against the ranch. Meanwhile, Rip and half of the ranch hands are off in Texas working some of their herd with the 4-6's ranch. Casey and his family are doing their best to branch away from the ranch, and everyone else on the ranch feels lost after John's death as they mull over their own futures with the ranch or elsewhere. Every once in a while, we get a scene of Chief Rainwater and Mo looking on with disgust over some ongoing development of the land. Apparently, they're still hard at work in trying to take the ranch and fend off these other land developers. But their storyline is such an underdeveloped afterthought that we never even see them working toward their goal. They're relegated to scenes like this, overlooking some vista that's being developed while being sad and promising revenge. And when the last episode begins with some natives sabotaging a development site, you have to plumb the depths of your memory to even remember that they're still a part of this show. The whole season culminates with John Dutton's funeral in the finale. The patriarch of the Dutton family, the man who held the wolves at bay for the entirety of this show, is laid to rest on the ranch, but Beth just can't help herself. She makes a complete ass out of herself and manages to make the whole funeral about her and her problems. Then she races off toward a final confrontation with Jamie. She ambushes him in his home, and the two have a bloody, all-out brawl in his dining room before Rip shows up and Beth stabs Jamie. She then tasks Rip with disposing the body and getting rid of the evidence, while she plays the part of the victim with the cops. The story ends with the Duttons selling the Yellowstone ranch to Rainwater's tribe for pennies on the dollar, ensuring that the ranch will remain untouched and undeveloped in perpetuity. Beth and Rip find a place of their own, and Casey finally gains his freedom from the ranch, and with that, Yellowstone's story is officially in the books. What stands out most to me about the second half of Season 5 was that it really felt like little more than an extended farewell to Yellowstone, with hardly any story to tell. It seemed like every once in a while the show would remember that they're supposed to be telling one final story to wrap things up, and would then shoehorn in some plot development. And what little story there was completely drowned out by long, drawn-out scenes of people looking longingly over a landscape or something. And this was compounded by the halting manner in which the story played out, with random time jumps forward and back during the first 3 episodes. Well, at least Monica didn't suffer another ridiculous bullshit tragedy that forced her to suffer through another bout of depression for the rest of the season. That's just about the only place where the writing improved, This second half of the season sure stumbled out of the gates too. It took 3 full episodes for Beth and Casey to get down to the business of investigating their father's death, the first thing that was even mildly interesting this season. Everything up until then was just utterly boring fluff and shameless plugs for the 4-6's ranch and even its products at one point. I said previously that I didn't expect much from Sheridan's writing this season, with him regularly putting in the minimum effort in this and all his other half 100 ongoing projects. But even I was a bit taken aback by how phoned in this last installment felt. And the characters were possibly even more of a mess than the story. John Dutton, the lion of the Dutton family, the man who single-handedly held back the tide for another generation, was killed in his sleep without a fight. And as if that wasn't enough, we learn that he also kept a woman trapped on the ranch for months. Yep, Summer, the animal rights activist he was stooping, didn't even know she was allowed to leave this whole time, painting John in a very creepy light when he's no longer around to defend himself. While he wasn't just sitting around being sullen, Casey was mostly off doing his own uninteresting thing. Colby was killed off just so that Teeter of all people had something to do in this last season. The rest of the ranch hands just sit around and talk about other job openings. Rip never reclaimed his position as the badass enforcer people fell in love with. Beth devolved into the worst possible version of herself as a chain-smoking alcoholic whose actions are all justified by her need for vengeance against the world. And apparently we're not free of her yet, as she and Rip look poised to get their own spin-off series. And Sheridan featured the unbearably arrogant and unlikable Travis character, who he himself plays, as much as any other character, save for that intolerable iteration of Beth I just mentioned. Also, this season cemented Jamie, who is supposed to be the big, bad, dangerous villain at this point, as an absolutely weak, weaselly little bitch. Even though he's the Attorney General of the state, he has zero agency and just gets pushed around by others looking to use him toward their ends. And at the end, his death by Beth's hands almost feels like a mercy killing, as his weakness saw his life spiraling out of control. With Jamie being shown to be as strong as a fart in the wind, he never feels like a real threat, so in the end, his death doesn't carry an ounce of emotional weight. But Jamie did serve as one of the centers of all the soap opera-style drama this season. From his overly dramatic feud with his estranged sister, to his meeting with his baby mama, and even his torrid affair with the woman who had his father killed, Jamie's story, and this season as a whole for that matter, had more soap than a Dove factory. It didn't stop with him, though. Colby's needless death so Teeter had something to cry about, Casey trying to get his family away from the ranch, Beth and Rip trying to play family with Carter. All the soapy nonsense of this season made the previous seasons that actually had stories to tell feel like they happened in a completely different show. While we're on the subject of how absolutely soapy Yellowstone became, I wanted to highlight some of the lowlights from this final season, many of which would put your typical soap operas to shame.
Pardon us?
No, I don't think I will. Without changing the sheets.
And there were plenty of other dumb things this season decided to show us in lieu of actually coming up with a good story to close the book on this long-running and somehow still popular show. Like Jamie and Beth's final showdown. Their little brawl, complete with bear mace, a knife, and skim milk, was the height of absurdity this season, especially because it was supposed to be the big climactic moment of not only their decades-long feud, but also this show's entire story. And then there was Sheridan portraying his own character as a playboy playing strip poker with a bunch of whores. Or Beth, a married woman, playing strip poker with that same character, her husband's best friend. Or Teeter, who hails from a town on the border of Texas, being the one who didn't cinch up her tent at night in Texas, and therefore being the one who woke up with a rattlesnake on her chest. Or Beth and Casey literally feeling the moment their father died 100 miles away. Or Casey casually choking a nurse unconscious as a demonstration instead of just explaining the maneuver. There was no shortage of dumb, ridiculous scenes in Yellowstone's final season, but unfortunately, it's a fitting end for a show that fell off long ago. People's opinions about Yellowstone Season 5 are appropriately low. Audiences are giving Season 5 a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 4.2 on Metacritic. Yellowstone continues to spread the disappointment far and wide, however, as the series finale topped more than 11 million viewers. So regardless of the quality, and even with Kevin Costner out of the picture, people continued to tune into Yellowstone. For me, this show started to become a hate watch a few seasons ago, and Season 5, which I'm giving the hate watch designation, was just the sad, sputtering end of a show in its death throes. In my last video on Yellowstone, I said that I didn't have much hope for these final 6 episodes, and I discussed why at length. But even after all of that, Yellowstone Season 5 still found a way to disappoint me. Although there's no denying the impact that Yellowstone had over those 5 seasons, as proven by the massive viewership numbers in the face of open backlash against the show, and the nearly innumerable spin-offs the show has spawned. Whether you hated it from the start, loved it, then hated it, or still love it now, Yellowstone made its mark, and the brand is here to stay for a little while longer at least. For me, though, the legacy of Yellowstone will always bear some tarnish with how it ended, and all I'm really left to look back fondly on are a few great moments that feel ever more fleeting by the day. Did you watch Yellowstone until the grisly end? How much do you think Kevin Costner being in the show would have changed the quality of this second half of Season 5? Do you have any interest in Sheridan's other shows or the Yellowstone spin-offs? Or did the way things came to an end here turn you off from them? Let us know in the comments below. Also remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for beating this dead horse with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.